Hi everyone, Sam Wenzel here from Sam's Woodland Tours, and today I'm out. I've got a little fire going here, burning down the coals so I can do a cooking demonstration, but I'd like to do a review first on a particular cast iron frying pan that I enjoy using. So it's made by Camp Chef, and it is on the smaller end of the spectrum. So we all know that there's plenty of different sizes of cast iron cookware for those who enjoy cast iron cooking. But of course I'm dealing with the 4-inch cast iron skillet. The uses of this, the benefits of it, some people may not go for it. I mean, of course, if you're going backpacking, any kind of long distance, you can get plenty of lightweight, made out of other material cookware. This is more for those of us who enjoy the nostalgia of the cast iron cooking, or the benefits to it. So of course, if I go camping with a canoe, car camping, or any kind of shorter distance hikes, I can take things with me such as like the larger cast iron Dutch ovens, and I've even been known to, on some hikes, take in the 8-inch skillets. Not so much always the 12-inch or the Dutch ovens. And actually, great thing about this is even fits in a pocket. So if you're going somewhere, if you got a group of friends that like to tease you because you always have cast iron with you, you can pull this out of the pocket and say, yes, even though we walked so many kilometers, I still have some with me. The main reason why I own it, though, is my father and I were actually looking for a way of cooking on a twig burning stove, or even any kind of gas powered stove, gas fuel one. A way of cooking up some Bannock or something like that, where you didn't need to do it on a stick, and we didn't need to purchase any other lighter weight stuff. And for the price of $12, purchased off of Amazon, it's actually a pretty good way of going about doing it. Now again, your portions are going to be a bit on the small side, so certain things you may not wish to do all the time. So for instance, if you're looking to cook eggs, it's a little tricky to fry more than one egg at a time, although you do get a pretty uniform shape on it because of the size. So this is great for making single servings of Bannock or anything, any kind of baked good that you want to do in a frying pan, and it's going to be a little bit bigger or a little bit smaller than a muffin. So you can have that with you rather than have to do it on a stick, or like I said, if you're looking to avoid using or purchasing any of the other ultralight camping cooking equipment. So you can also do bacon in this. You can do anything in this that you want to, that you would normally do in a larger frying pan, but of course you just have the benefit of being lighter. If you want to do any amount and you're going any distance, you might want to consider something larger, or you're going to have to be really patient and cook it one piece at a time. Great thing about cast iron is, of course, you've got the nostalgia. You also have the different flavors. Some people prefer it for health reasons, and other people do not. And of course, you would have to treat this like you would any other piece of cast iron cookware. So you'd want to season it, you want to take care of it, make sure you're not drying it out too much, that sort of deal. So without further ado, I think I'm going to go get my cooking ingredients and mix up some Bannock. Okay, so I've got my ingredients here. I'll just have to add some water. I've got some lard, which I'm going to melt here on the fire and use that to grease the pan. So it'll be well seasoned and ready for my cooking. Before I do that, though, I thought I'd mention that the handle on these are usually kind of on the small side. So you may want to consider, or just be aware, that it's going to heat up pretty quick, as you should expect any kind of metal or any kind of iron cookware to do that. You also have some other things here. You have some dimples, or sort of divots of sort, where you can pour out of it if you're cooking some form of liquid. This basically just looks like a traditional frying pan, of course, but a little smaller. And it's about roughly a ½ inch deep. So I'm just going to sit that on the fire and get that lard melting. And while I do that, I'll finish mixing this up. So I've made, over the years, I've made quite a few different types of Bannock. What I've got today is sort of a modified recipe, and I say that because I sort of started to base my Bannock off of the recipe that's found in Morse Kohansky's Bushcraft book. But what I've done today is it's a bit similar. So I've got flour, I've got baking powder, a pinch of salt, And so instead of a full cup of flour, I've got about a half cup of flour. That usually does about one person. I'm probably not going to get this all in this frying pan, but if I can, that'll be great. About a half, somewhere between a quarter and a half teaspoon of baking powder. Pinch of salt, like I mentioned. Now, his recipe called for maple syrup or brown sugar. Today I didn't add either because what I've put in is a bit of cinnamon and raisins. So it's more like a raisin bread or a raisin bagel kind of deal going on here. So didn't bring any exact measurements. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of water at a time. So if you ever find yourself you want to mix up any kind of bread but you don't have a measuring cup with you, what you do is you add it in a little bit at a time and stir it in slowly. And that way you're less likely to add too much by mistake. Sometimes I mix up my Bannock in advance, bring it with in Ziploc bags, or in the case of today, a plastic or sealable container. Kind of depends on how far, how long I'm going, and of course whether or not I'm worried about weight. And today I wasn't really worried about weight because my frying pan's really small. Just a bit more. Great thing about Bannock is it's a traditional Scottish recipe or a Scottish dish, but it's pretty easy to modify. Like I said, you can add all kinds of things. I even worked at a program once where the person in charge looked at me and said, "If chocolate Bannock isn't a thing, make it a thing, Zan." So I did. That worked out pretty well. So it's pretty easy to modify, add any kind of different recipes. Of course, Bannock goes pretty well on a stick as well, if you don't want to take a frying pan or anything like that with you. And the recipe I'm using, you can modify it if you so wish to use any kind of gluten-free flour, if you can't do regular flour for whatever reason or don't want to. I'm just going to remove that from the heat. Add my Bannock. So this is roughly the size that I'd usually do for a single serving if you're eating it with something else. So I basically half a recipe that's normally for 2 people. The thing about Bannock that you need to remember is, unless you're just eating it on its own, it's a pretty dense, heavy bread, unleavened bread. So I'll just finish plopping that into, or shaping it into the frying pan there. That back on the heat, and as soon as that's cooked, I'll turn the camera back on and show you the finished product. Alright, so I've removed the frying pan from the heat. I am using a mitten to hold on to it because, like I said, it does get a little warm. Although out here in the winter time I find these things cool off a little quicker than they do in the summer. When you're cooking Bannock in a frying pan, there's a few different ways of going about it. The way I do, though, is usually I have a nice bed of coals built up, if I can. A little bit of flame is okay, but you want to have your fire going for a little while. And of course, you're going to need a way of flipping whatever you're doing if you're baking bread right in the frying pan. So I brought with me one of the wooden spoons I've made, and I was just able to flip it, and what I have is a nice golden brown cinnamon raisin piece of Bannock here. So it all worked out, and that's actually a pretty good hunk of bread. A little bit around the size of a muffin, I'd say, quantity-wise. So if you're looking to do any kind of fresh baking on the trail, and you know you're going to go a long distance, and you don't quite want to haul, say, a 12-inch cast iron Dutch oven, or even a skillet, there's a few different options on the market for some of your smaller cast iron pieces, if you so wish to have something from either for reenactment purposes or anything like that. So, as always, I'd like to thank you for watching this, and if you feel like it, please click like and subscribe down below. I'm going to go ahead and enjoy this Bannock now, but thank you very much. Okay, so I've got my ingredients here all mixed up. I'll just have to add some water, and I'll talk about the recipe here in a second. One other thing I wanted to mention, it does come with a handle, or obviously on the frying pan. That was dumb. Now I'll leave it.